Good evening, distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends. I'm Hania Salah, Director of the Columbia Global Center in Amman. I'm delighted to welcome you all to this evening's talk, Closing the AI Gap Among High-Income Countries, Emerging Markets, and Developing Economies, with Professor Yanis Ben Amor, Executive Director of the Center for Sustainable Development and Assistant Professor of Global Health and Microbiological Sciences at Columbia University. He is also director of the university-wide Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Work initiative, launched in partnership with the Future Investment Initiative Institute. For over 15 years, the Amman Global Center has been dedicated to fostering spaces for research, knowledge exchange, and collaboration across Jordan and the region. Through our programs and initiatives, we partner with local and regional institutions and individuals to address pressing issues and leverage unique opportunities. Tonight's event reflects that mission, to not only understand the innovations shaping our world, but to explore what they mean for us here in this region. Globally, artificial intelligence is reshaping education, research, healthcare, commerce, and many other sectors. It is also transforming economies by changing how work is done and where value is created. But with this progress comes a critical question. Is artificial intelligence reducing inequalities, or will it deepen them? This concern is not theoretical. The capacity to develop and benefit from AI depends on foundational elements, skills, resources, and infrastructure, which remain unevenly distributed across countries. Without care, that imbalance risks leaving many societies on the margins. If its design draws only on narrow sets of cultures, languages, or experiences, its impact will carry that narrowness forward. Ensuring that diverse voices are part of this conversation is essential to building technologies that are both effective and relevant. Here in the Middle East, the stakes are especially clear. The region has youthful talent, creative energy, and a growing technology sector, yet it also faces structural constraints that could limit participation. The decisions made now in education, policy, and investment will determine whether AI becomes a tool for empowerment and competitiveness or a force that entrenches disparities. That's why conversations like the one we are having this evening are important in shaping meaningful participation in the AI era. Turning now to our speaker, Professor Yanis Ben Amor brings over 20 years of experience developing digital tools that bridge gaps in access and opportunity, particularly in global health. He has also worked with institutions such as the Pasteur Institute in Paris. He currently leads multiple projects involving AI aimed at expanding healthcare access in low and middle income countries. At Columbia, Professor Yanis has launched a university-wide initiative to study the impact of AI on the future of work and education, with a particular focus on those countries. Professor Yanis holds a PhD in molecular biology and has published widely on infectious diseases, global health, and prevention. He is also a frequent speaker at international conferences representing Columbia University and its climate school around the world. Our event this evening is in partnership with the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University. After the talk, we will open the floor for a short Q&A. Following that, there will be an opportunity to continue these conversations at a reception in the courtyard. We thank you for all being here tonight, and now it is my pleasure to invite Professor Yanis Ben Amor to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hania, for this very, very kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an absolute pleasure to be here tonight. I have been honored. The reason why I am in Jordan actually tonight is because I have been honored to participate in an event that you might have seen on the cover of the Jordan Times today, organized by the National Council for Future Technology under the patronage of His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, and it's actually to bring innovations in 6 key domains, one of them being digital health, which I participated in, but also smart living, education, future of work, sustainability, and green technologies, and the last one being AI and digital finance. So it is an extremely exciting moment, I would say, for Jordan, because the country is embarking on a series of changes, and I hope that all of you in the audience are going to also be interested in some of these ideas that are coming out of this council, and hopefully participate in shaping the future of your country. As Hania introduced, my work, 2 years ago, I started an initiative at Columbia that is actually cross-department. It's trying to unify all of the schools to think about AI and the future of work. When I found out about ChatGPT back in January of 2023, I thought this is an incredible technology that is going to shape the way that we work. Is there a way that academia, Columbia University, can be part of the process and try to imagine how all of our jobs are going to be impacted, and have today an opportunity to make sure that artificial intelligence is complementing the way that we work rather than replacing us? Is there a way that we can fast forward to the future, to 2030, to 2040, and imagine what it means to be the surgeon of the future, the lawyer of the future, and include all of the ideas of how artificial intelligence will be complementing us, and introduce them in the curricula so that we as academia are putting on the market the future workers that are going to be not obsolete 2 or 3 years after joining the workforce. So that was number one. Number two, as the last name probably told you, I am from the region. I am Tunisian, so I am from North Africa. And my concern was, great, the students at Columbia University in New York, yes, we are going to teach them about artificial intelligence, and we are going to include in the curricula what it means to be a surgeon using AI, or what it means to be an architect using AI. But what about the youth from our region? If I am Tunisian and I am 19, or if I am Jordanian and I am 19, what are my chances in today's market? So the initiative is actually global. We have expertise from every region, academia, private sector, and we pride ourselves in the fact that we have the opportunity to get the perspective of not just Americans or Europeans. And I will tell you, we are still actively looking for members from Jordan. The 4 task forces that we're working on in this initiative are macroeconomics, health, education, and ethics. And so if you have the expertise that is needed, please come see me afterwards, and we can talk about how to get you involved. So a lot of what I'm going to present today is coming from these 2 reports that my center wrote in partnership with our funder, the Future Investment Initiative. I will also have this slide in the end so you can see the QR code and download these. So my talk tonight will have the following outline. I just want to give you just a quick background about why we are talking about this issue and why we think that this is important. And then I will give you all of the information that you need to know about resources and infrastructure, which is creating the digital gap. Some important information about AI training tools. Maybe some of you don't know what goes into that. And then I will present the actual digital gap between high-income countries and emerging and developing economies. And then I'll leave a few slides to talk about opportunities, and I'll try to bring it back to the Jordanian context. So I would consider that 2023 really is what I would call year 1 of the Gen AI revolution. It's when ChatGPT 3.5 was released in November. And so I would say once the general population started hearing about its capability, it probably split us into 2. People like me who are techno-utopians, people who believe that artificial intelligence will be the solution to all of our problems. We will find cures to cancers. We will find cures to Parkinson's. And it's already been shown that artificial intelligence has an incredible capability of analyzing data and finding a drug in an hour and a half when it would have taken research more than 100 years. So that's the techno-utopians. On the other hand, you have the techno-pessimists. Artificial intelligence, it's coming for our jobs. Artificial intelligence, eventually it will kill us all. So somewhere, you are probably in the middle, but it's interesting to know which side you would rather be on. If I would say, as you are creating teams, if you work in technology, it's always good to have a healthy mix of both sides. Because, you know, the optimist is the one who invents the plane, but the pessimist is the one who invents the parachute. So make sure that you keep both sides involved. So at this point, we really still have opportunities to have major impact on the direction where the AI is going. You know, we are in year 3. I firmly believe that, you know, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, they will look back at all the decisions we have taken, and they will say, you are the reason why we are no longer able to do this. You are the reason why this is now what artificial intelligence is doing. They will say that. We are the people who are deciding which way it's going, and it's not too late. So we have to involve universities and schools for the integration of AI in curricula. This is extremely important. And in fact, when I started talking to Colombia about this, the reaction was like, why wouldn't you just wait for AI to find a mature state? But if you are in the field, you understand that this is never going to happen. AI moves so exponentially rapidly that if you wait even a year, you are going to find yourself totally submerged. So, to give you an idea of the speed of adaptation, of adoption of technology. So it took 75 years for the fixed telephone to reach 100 million users globally. For mobile phones, they reached that milestone in just 16 years. The internet, 7 years for 100 million users. ChatGPT did that in 2 months, okay? But the speed, of course, of adoption is uneven worldwide. So the question that we should ask ourselves in this part of the world, the possibility of leapfrogging. Can we reach it? I will also make a point in this presentation that there is a very urgent need for inclusive AI. We need to have strong representation from emerging market and developing economies as artificial intelligence tools are being developed. We need to be the voices, we need to be included. Specific geographical, historical, economic, and cultural contexts need to be represented, and we need to ensure that the AI tools are effective globally and not just in high-income countries. So, you will see, I'm going to make a point that there is a need to prevent a widening of the digital gap, and I believe that you are here because you agree with that. So let's first look at the resource and infrastructure that is needed in order to develop these AI tools. And I'm going to start by a very important part, which is computational power. So ChatGPT technology relies on thousands of specialized computer chips, and I will tell you that it's impossible today to quantify exactly what is the need or the AI energy use, because the company, OpenAI, will not reveal that. But people have estimated, people in the field who understand what goes into it, and they say 500,000 kilowatt per hour of electricity for 200 million requests per day. And they estimate that by 2027, AI servers could use between 85 and 134 terawatt hours annually. That is the total consumption of electricity of Argentina, the Netherlands, and Sweden combined in 1 year. It's 0.5% of the world's current electricity use. So the question is, when you are an emerging market and a developing economy, how do you use your scarce resources when you have ambitions to develop artificial intelligence and AI tools? So, computational power. Just, again, know that these are only estimates, but the annual operating cost of ChatGPT in 2023 was 474 million per year, or 1.3 million per day. Each query costs about 0.1 cent, and as a result, some generative AI companies who wanted to get into the market declared bankruptcy because they just couldn't follow this type of capital investment. In fact, even OpenAI entered a partnership with Microsoft back in 2024 in order to be able to raise all of the capital. And in fact, what Microsoft is now doing is they're developing their own chips in order to compete with NVIDIA, who is now the major chip maker. There is a joke, of course, that the CEO of OpenAI said about a month ago, when you ask a query to ChatGPT and you're satisfied with the answer, do not write thank you, because that thank you might be burning a forest or might be depleting a lake in terms of consumption of energy. So computational power is described as predominant factor driving the industry today in the private sector. And companies have spent 80%, private companies have spent 80% of their total capital on computational power resources. So in this graph, I'm showing you how the global computing power market is going to evolve in expectation. So the market will grow 6.8% to 81.3 billion by 2032. In 21-22, the International Data Corporation published a white paper that they titled Global Computing Index Assessment. And there was a correlation between a country's GDP, gross domestic product, and the digital economy and computing power. What they found back then, before ChatGPT, for every point increase in computing index in 15 countries that they were looking at, the national digital economy and GDP increased by 3.5 per thousand and 1.8 per thousand, respectively. So when the computing index surpasses 40 points, the impact on GDP increases by 1.5, and it can go up to 3 times when computing index exceeds 60. So then they ranged the countries. Of course, the leaders were US and China, and then you had countries that they classified as chaser, like Japan, Germany, UK, France, and then beginners, India, Italy, Brazil. Notice Jordan, Tunisia didn't make the list. So, as I said, US and China, top 2 countries, rising countries were classified between 40 and 55, and then scores lower than 40 points were considered to be startup countries. So most emerging market and developing economies would not fare well on this global computing assessment index. So it stunts their opportunities for independent development of new AI tools and models, both locally relevant, but also context appropriate. So in Africa, there are 2 supercomputers, one in Morocco and one in South Africa. In the Middle East, do you know where they are? In the Middle East, there are also 2 supercomputers. Do you know where they are? UAE and Saudi Arabia, correct. So Shaheen is Saudi Arabia and Stargate is UAE. Interestingly, Qatar has the funding. They have not developed the supercomputer. And yeah, so Tunisia, Jordan, we are not on the list. So, not enough, sorry? No, exactly. I like that spirit. This is exactly what I want to get. But there is not enough computing power to serve the entire MENA region. And report from the Tony Blair Institute, looking specifically at Africa, shows that the cloud computing adoption in Africa remains at 15%, which is significantly lower than Europe, which is at 71%. Okay, so that was computing. Now let's look at data and the availability of data. As I said many times today during the meeting at the National Council, data is the new gold. Really, this is what's going to be the most valuable commodity that countries trade. AI models like ChatGPT rely on large amounts of diverse, high-quality data for training, which have been fed into their algorithm. And now I'm going to tell you how much data is needed. So to develop a large language model, developers need at least a few 100 million words of digitized text to produce sentences that make sense grammatically and semantically. So there is something that is called the Turing test. I'm not going to go into the details, but it was basically developed by a genius during World War II, and he anticipated that when we are able to develop artificial intelligence, when humans are fooled by the machine and that the machine can make you think that you are actually interacting with a human, that's passing the Turing test. And so this is the first level, being able to develop sentences that make sense grammatically. But to develop LLMs that are fact-based, output and complex analyses, like what you would need, for example, in the medical field, then developers need billions or tens of billions of digitized text. So developed countries with their advanced technological infrastructure and access to abundant data sources are in general more likely to possess the necessary data for training sophisticated AI models. But if you're a developer or a university in emerging market and developing economies, you have limited access to comprehensive data sets. So that is inhibiting your ability to train your AI model effectively. Less volume, less accurate training data will lead to less accurate models. The famous, saying, garbage in, garbage out. Let me visually show you the problem that we are facing with. So I have done searches on Google with keywords, and I have looked at the number of hits. If I was looking at health in the US, and you see that it's 19 billion hits. If I am looking at health in the UK, it goes down to 8 billion, and let me just go right through. If I'm interested in health in Tunisia, then the number of pages that come out are 287 million, okay? So researchers in Tunisia working on AI models using, for example, education in Tunisia, using the English words, education in Tunisia. They have 80 times less web pages, so 80 times less data availability than researchers in the US using education in US as the key term. And that's using words that are quite simple, education and US. So if you are interested in niche topics in order to develop your large language model, your availability is going to be even less. So there is also, in this part of the world, a problem of digitization of data. A lot of the data is actually still handwritten, okay? So that is going to reduce your ability to develop comprehensive large language models. And 100 of languages in EMDEs are spoken, but not written. So UN Technology and Innovation Report shows that AI frontrunners such as China, United Kingdom, and the United States possess nearly half of all the AI-related publications and patents. So this dominance leaves many nations, particularly EMDEs, lagging behind and often relegated to the role of data provider, which is really not what we want for this part of the world. Not just sending our data out for others to develop their technology and then being recipient of that. So, likewise, a handful of global tech giants control most of the data flows and revenues from digital services, which further centralizes the direction and benefits of AI and aggravates existing technology divides based on geography, gender income, and age. Now, let's look at talent. Developing, implementing AI systems require highly skilled professionals with expertise in areas such as machine learning, data science, and AI ethics. So, in developed countries, they tend to have, of course, more established ecosystems for AI research, both in the private sector and in academia, and they can attract a large pool of skilled professionals, including people from our part of the world. So they often attract top talent, have well-funded research programs, and offer extensive opportunities for collaboration. But universities and private sectors in developing countries, they face challenges in attracting and training AI experts, limiting their ability to build and deploy sophisticated AI systems. And what's worse, so in 2018, the World Economic Forum already predicted that by 2022, AI and machine learning skills would be among the world's top 10 most in-demand skills. And in fact, last year at the World Economic Forum, so January 2024, there was an IMF report that said that 40% of the workforce from our part of the world had zero chance in the workforce of the future because we are not training them for AI competence, they don't have the infrastructure, and they don't have the resources. 40% of the people coming from our region. And that is what we have to fight. And of course, as was also discussed over the last 2 days, there is a problem of brain drain. So you actually spend the capital and you spend the energy and the time in training brilliant minds from this part of the world, and then they get poached to go to Gulf, or like me, to go to the US. I'm a hypocrite because I have been brain drained, and I admit that. So, okay, moving from talent to financial resources. Financial constraints summarize the divide. That's obviously what I've been talking about for the last few slides between high-income countries and LMICs. So AI research and development requires significant investment in infrastructure, hardware, software, and ongoing maintenance. Yes, because you can have all of the talent, but if you don't have the capital in order to invest into the supercomputer, into the computing power, the infrastructure, then you're not able to compete against the neighboring countries or US and China. So that is a problem that will have to be discussed. Developed countries with greater financial resources can allocate substantial funds to AI initiatives in universities, enabling them to pursue cutting-edge research. But universities and private sector in our part of the world, they struggle to secure sufficient funding for AI-related projects, which limits their ability to participate fully in the AI revolution. So, this was setting the stage. Now, let's move into AI training models. How does this actually work? So, the training of ChatGPT is using mostly English language data sets, which poses significant challenges for speakers of other languages, including Chinese, Spanish, and Arabic. So I'm going to make a point, and you might be revolted by this, but it is a fact. When you're asking today ChatGPT a question in Arabic, you're actually getting the perspective of a white Anglo-Saxon man. And I will prove to you over the next few slides why that is. Even when you ask your question in Arabic, the perspective, the culture is from a white Anglo-Saxon man. So, and that has to do with the way that ChatGPT has been trained. And this is something that we need to counter. So while ChatGPT's capabilities in generating human-like responses and providing information are impressive, even when you're asking in Arabic, the effectiveness and accuracy was only limited when limited when interacting with non-English speakers. So, because of the availability of relevant data for training ChatGPT in languages other than English is limited compared to English. So AI models like ChatGPT require large volumes of high-quality, diverse data for training to ensure optimal performance. So there is a wealth of English language data available on the internet, but unfortunately the same cannot be said about other languages, like Chinese, Arabic, that are estimated to be spoken by 1.3 billion and 422 million people worldwide. So here I'm going to show you exactly the extent of the issue. You can see that 17% of people worldwide speak English either as a first language or as a second language. But the share of websites that are written in the English language is over half. In comparison, if you look at Chinese, that is just slightly less. 13.8% of the world population speaks Chinese, but the percentage of the web pages in that language drops to 1.3%. Look at Arabic. We are 3.4% of the speakers worldwide, and our representation on the internet is 0.6%. We can try to debate philosophically why that is. One of the reasons is because the language that we write, or I would say the language that we are forced to write when we are academicians, when we write reports and research, etc., has to be English, because otherwise our impact worldwide is going to be very limited. Very few people are going to be reading your report in Arabic. Very few people are going to be reading your report in Chinese. So there is already a dominance of the English language, which explains this disproportionate, access. And there are ways that we can think about how to change that. So, do you remember in one of the earlier slides, I showed you how many hits you would have if you asked health in Tunisia? And I specifically said that's by using the words in English. But as you well know, ladies and gentlemen, English is not our national language. So I went back and I actually compared how many hits you have if you use the two national languages. So just to remind you, if you ask health in Tunisia in English, you get 287 million pages. But if you ask Saha fi Tunis, it drops down to 40 million. And if you ask in French, La santé en Tunisie, then you are in 48 million. You see, again, my point? So even when you are talking about the local language in the country, the number of pages that are referring to the topic that should be in that language are actually much less than the predominant language, which is English. And again, this fuels the problem that I'm trying to demonstrate. So this has direct impact on the quality of the training materials for less represented languages, such as Arabic, and for specific contexts of LMICs, such as Tunisia and Jordan. Lack of data from diversified languages lead to issues in language understanding and context. So ChatGPT may struggle to comprehend nuances and idiomatic expressions, cultural references, and specific linguistic structures present in other languages, such as Arabic or Chinese. So this limitation can lead to misinterpretation, incorrect responses, or a lack of understanding when ChatGPT interacts with Arabic or Chinese native speakers rather than English speakers. So I told you about this expression, garbage in, garbage out. I want to tell you a really funny, but also very unfortunate example coming out of Catalonia, which is a region of Spain. So Google Translate is very bad translating Catalan because there are not enough pages that it was trained on. So the government of Catalonia had this brilliant idea. They said, let's develop web pages with the extension .cat, and we will make these pages specifically for people who are expressing themselves in Catalan. In order for you to use the .cat web page, you have to write about whatever you want, but it has to be written in Catalan. And they were expecting Catalans to populate these web pages. Somehow, Americans found out about it, and the .cat became a way to advertise, yes, their cats. And so what did they do? In order to circumvent the requirement from the Catalan government, they used Google Translate to translate whatever inanity they had to write about their cat into Catalan. So now what happens? You have an already bad system that translates English into Catalan and refuels, bad translations, which then Google Translate would be using in order to learn. So this is funny, I would say, but really unfortunate outcome of something that should have been a great initiative, but that was unfortunately misappropriated. So another challenge is potential bias in the training data. AI models like ChatGPT learn from the data they are trained on. And if this data contains biases, the model will likely exhibit biases as well. So ChatGPT's training has primarily been focused on English. Biases present in English language data can carry over in its response. This bias can be particularly problematic when interacting with Arabic and Chinese-speaking users, as it may perpetuate cultural, social, or linguistic biases that are specific to English-speaking context. And here I want to give you another unfortunate example, but this is already from 2016. This is one of the early attempts of Microsoft to develop an AI tool for adolescents. And it was supposed to be an AI tool to help adolescents ask questions about sexual health. And the way that they trained the model is go on Instagram and go on Twitter and read the tweets from the youth, learn from it, and then when the youth is using this chatbot called Tay and asks question, then you will be able to answer. Do you know how long the service lasted? 16 hours. You were there 16 hours. Because, as the title says, well, not just Nazi, it became homophobic, it hated women. So that's the problem of bias, because it was reading really some of the filthy tweets from adolescents back in 2016, learned from that, and then basically regurgitated it. So making sure that the biases don't carry over is also a really important part of developing these large language models. Okay.
Sorry, you meant the ChatGPT was referring to the hate speech, and that's why it generated this kind of...
If it has been trained on material that contains that type of rhetoric, then it is likely that it will regurgitate that bias. That is correct. Okay, so now I will present to you, ladies and gentlemen, that digital gap. So I gave you all of the ingredients, why this digital gap is existing, but now I'm actually going to show you how deep it is. So here I'm showing the percentage share of global AI market by region. So in number one, North America, which has 36% of the global share, followed by Europe, followed by Asia Pacific. And look at that. We are so small that they had to group us among Latin America, Middle East, and Africa. And still, all three together, we are the last and only at 14%. So, if you want a visual representation, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. The closer you are to yellow, and the less AI preparedness you have. Okay, this is already 2 years old, but I can guarantee you it hasn't changed much. So most of the African continent is totally AI unprepared. And then, of course, in our region, you recognize the countries that are leading the effort. So over the next 2 slides, I want to show you a very interesting difference between what happens in Global North and Global South in terms of what AI is used for. And that's something for you to think about as Jordanians. So in high-income countries, what AI is mostly used for is services. So customer experience, supply chain, human resource, predictive analytics, real-time operations. These were the top AI use case that were recorded for high-income countries. In contrast, when AI is available in low and middle-income countries, it's actually used for more practical reasons. Fight climate change, help with education, help with agriculture, identity, finance and microfinancing. Some of the questions that we were talking over the last 2 days in this National Council Forum, healthcare, etc. So I think this is an interesting difference as well, is what we do with the AI in this part of the world when it's actually available. Okay, we're moving on to the final part of this presentation, which is opportunities. So where do we go from here? We know that obviously there is a divide that is due to the differences in resources, differences in availability of compute, of talent, etc. So I want to end maybe on a more positive note. So opportunities with AI infrastructure. So the estimates show that the AI revolution could increase. I'm looking at Africa because that is the continent with the least AI preparedness, which is why it's more striking. But the estimates show that the AI revolution in Africa could increase its economy by 1.5 trillion, which is 50% of the current GDP by 2030. Think about that. In 5 years, you could increase the GDP by 50% by developing the AI capability. So urgent need to strengthen AI infrastructure in our part of the world by bringing servers, data centers, cloud services, reliable internet access, and consistent electricity supply. Now, of course, you're going to say to me, we didn't wait for you to know that. So how would we do this? Okay, let's think about creative solutions over the next few slides. So, for example, there are private companies who have already pledged that they are going to help reduce this digital gap. So, for example, NVIDIA announced a plan to build a 200 million artificial intelligence center in Indonesia with local telecom company. And that would actually serve the region and not just Indonesia. I think that it's time to talk about shared fund for open computing access. And this is really when we have to stop thinking as countries and more thinking about region. Because we are stronger when we unite, in my opinion. So EMDE regions, Africa, Middle East, North Africa, can create common pool of funding for open and accessible AI computing infrastructure. And we should really focus on making computing power accessible to researchers and innovators in the region. This would democratize access and broaden range of innovations. So let me make this very concrete. In April of 2025, the World Economic Forum, who's also a convener of the meeting in Jordan over the last 2 days, organized the first AI summit, and it was in Rwanda. And at that summit, it was disclosed that $30 billion were going to be made available specifically for the development of AI infrastructure, AI talent for the African continent. The way that they are going to go about remains a mystery, but there was a pledge of 30 billion. What I found interesting, and this is something that I would say urge this region, MENA, to think about, is that there were 2 African investors who decided to put funding to develop supercomputing and make it available for the entire continent free of charge in order to help with the development of the capabilities of innovators to come up with AI ideas and also researchers and universities. So let's think creatively. Are there, very wealthy investors coming out of our region who would want to benefit by creating similar initiatives? And the other thing that Africa has been talking about is centers of excellence. They would be benefiting the entire region. There would be a flow of talent. So whenever, instead of having 56 countries. So instead of having 56 centers of AI across the African continent, you could negotiate common frameworks and allow maybe having one on the east, one on the west, and one on the south, and allow free market. People from the west can all congregate in Ghana. People from the east will all congregate in Rwanda, and people from the south will all congregate in South Africa. There will be free movement, and whatever is developed is for the benefit of everyone. So this is a very optimistic idea, of course, but you have to think, what is Jordan's main advantage? It's you. It's the people. It's the talent. What do you lack? It's funding. Who has funding in the region? Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar. What do they not have? Is the people. Qatar is definitely in lack of talent. And so creating frameworks where it's a win-win situation, where you benefit from their resource and they benefit from yours, as long as it's understood that whatever comes out of it benefits all parties and not just one, is something to be thinking about. So, some people have talked about a global fund for AI. So, you might not know this. I work for an economist called Jeffrey Sachs. Back in 2000, he created the global fund for TB, HIV, and malaria. And just a quick idea about that. When he traveled a lot of the African countries, he realized there is no way that these countries and the ministries of health can eradicate HIV, TB, and malaria with the budget that the ministries of health have at their access. So we need to think creatively about an outside force for good that would actually help compensate the lack, and it would be around commodities. So let's say you need HIV medicine, you need bed nets for malaria, you need TB drugs. So instead of expecting the Kenyan Ministry of Health to pay for it, which they can't, so we'll create what we call a global fund. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to tell you that that idea was brilliant because it is now credited with the decrease of HIV, TB, and malaria in the African continent since 2000, because these availability of commodities have made a significant change. So, using that idea, people were thinking, oh, should we come up with a global fund for artificial intelligence? There is a debate about that, which I'm happy to discuss over the reception. The reason for that is because people don't think yet, shockingly, that AI is transformational. Let me give you a side story about that. What do I mean, by the way, that AI is not transformational? Do you think, ladies and gentlemen from the Jordanian audience, do you think that AI is transformational? Do you think that AI is something that's not going to go away and that will lead to significant changes in society? Okay, let me ask that differently. Is there anyone in the audience who does not think that AI is transformational? To put you on the spot. Okay, so I was recently speaking at the Delphi Economic Forum, and as part of that, because they knew that I was working on AI in the future of work, they invited me to a closed session of the Greek CEO. I am not disclosing anything that is secret because that report has since been released. But I was really surprised because they asked the Greek CEOs, it's actually CEOs, CFOs, etc., so the C-level executive in Greece, they asked a series of questions, and one of the questions was, do you think that AI will lead to an increase of performance and productivity within your company? Ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't even quantified. It was a yes and no question. What do you think the Greek CEO responded? You would think. You are very positive. That was not at all the outcome. 10% of the Greek CEO that were surveyed across Greece, 10% said zero increase in productivity. 57% said less than 10%. So what does that mean? 75% of the Greek CEO that were questioned actually don't think that AI is transformational. So how does that then translate? It means that also the education system is not going to be focusing on AI, since the private sector that is hiring the people coming out of academia is not believing that AI is transformational. So I'm happy to see that, you know, in Jordan you've already passed that step. Okay, so here I'm talking about regional AI computing programs. So I think countries in our region need to develop regional programs that support local researchers and innovators with subsidized or free computing resources backed by local universities, a little bit like the model of South Africa, as I told you earlier. But here's a large question. What do you then do with the brain drain? So you've spent all this, you know, resource, energy, etc., on developing your brilliant minds, but then you have 3 to 5 times the salary going to the Gulf countries. You have 7 times the salary going to the US. How do you prevent that? It's a larger question, and I'm not sure there is really an answer. But I just want to also tell you about some initiatives that are happening next door. Saudi Arabia planning a 40 billion push into artificial intelligence, which will not just benefit them. I would say, be smart and try to look at what exactly they're investing in, because there are opportunities for Jordanians to benefit from that. When my amazing president went to the Gulf regions around April, actually Saudi Arabia disclosed another initiative on top of the 40 billion, which was called Humane, spelled Humaine, and it was 10 billion for innovators worldwide to develop AI solutions. And so they would actually invest in you to develop your strategies. So I'm actually working now with the Saudi Sovereign Fund, PIF, to try to understand what are the modalities and making sure that, you know, I disseminate this also if there are opportunities for, you know, Jordanian candidates to benefit from that. So that's out of Saudi Arabia. Out of Qatar, 2.4 billion to bolster AI capabilities and attract global tech leaders. So I think final point on the opportunities is really a point that I want you to think about, is to create these regional integrated hubs. We are not financially, I would say as Tunisia, I don't want to talk about Jordan, but as Tunisia, we are not financially able to develop independently. So it really makes sense to start thinking about collating resources and establish multi-country integrated hubs for AI development. So they should have access to reliable power supply, high-speed internet, and other computing services to support both public and private usage to create a conducive environment for AI research and development. Incidentally, during that conference in Kigali, what the African delegations were saying to the World Economic Forum is, guys, if you are smart today, you are investing in developing our green energy, because we have unlimited solar, we have all this water, okay, we have the wind, and your machines and your ChatGPTs are going to be devouring the electricity. So be smart, develop our infrastructure, and then we can all benefit from that. Is that something that the Middle East can be thinking about? Finally, innovators and researchers can have access to shared computing resources within the hubs for short-term and long-term AI projects, as I was pointing out with the South African example. So just a few examples of regional LLMs. NEC Corporation in Japan has developed 13 billion parameters to achieve world-class proficiency in Japanese, which is commendable. I'm going to go straight down to the one we are interested in. Abu Dhabi has developed JICE, which is an LLM with 13 billion parameters for the Arabic language. And I do think that actually there was a Jordan company that was featured yesterday with a program called Tarjma, right? And Arabic.ai. So it's a Jordanian company that is actually developing LLMs in Arabic for translation, hence the word tarjma, presumably. So I really commend these types of initiatives, and they need to be increased. So maybe less so for Arabic, but Global Language Digitization Initiative that provides a reliable method of digitally rendering a language and increasing its digital footprint. This is more for languages maybe on the African continent that are spoken but not necessarily written. Okay. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, so Investment in local capacity building. So we need funding education, we need funding research, we need to fund infrastructure and AI within EMDEs, however that is, through attracting funding or actually collaboration with these partners that have access to funding while we have access to the talent. So local talent development through universities, specialized training programs, and partnership with international organizations can empower these countries to create homegrown AI solutions. Number two, open access to data and AI tools. So we need to advocate for global initiatives that promote open data sets, AI tools, and open source software. This is allowing companies everywhere to benefit from larger data sets and actually creating tools that are not just focused on one country. And there are, of course, questions of ethics and regulations on how that would happen. We need to make AI resources available for free or at reduced cost so we can level the playing field for innovators and researchers in EMDEs. Collaboration and knowledge sharing, need for international collaboration between high-income countries and EMDEs, cross-border partnerships in AI research, development and implementation can ensure knowledge transfer and help bridge the gap in AI skills and innovation. And then finally, ethical and inclusive AI policies. Importance of developing AI frameworks and policies that account for the unique challenge of EMDEs. So global policymakers need to prioritize inclusivity and ensure that AI solutions address the specific socioeconomic needs for these regions without exacerbating existing inequalities. And I will leave you again with the two reports that have helped craft this presentation. And I thank you so much for your attention. I am now ready for questions. Sorry, I meant the man with the white hand.
Sir, my question is, in countries like Jordan and across the Middle East, AI startups struggle with big challenges, getting enough funding and having access to good databases for training. The question is, what can governments, banks, and global investors do not to only provide the right funding, but also build shared databases and infrastructure that help local AI companies grow and compete globally instead of losing talent to richer countries? Also provide ways to gain capital investment through taxing companies a small percentage annually that goes into funding AI infrastructure, of course, from what is already the country is taxing, not adding more taxes. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So I'm going to speak from the angle that I know, which is health. You are aware that you have a system called Hakim, and Hakim is in every aspect of healthcare, right? Hakim is actually collecting very high quality data already, which is something that is super exciting when we're thinking about developing AI tools. The country is actually thinking right now about how to use AI tools in order to analyze this data more quickly so that they can predict the trends of diseases that are afflicting you and use the, let's say, more limited funding more efficiently so that they don't create initiatives around health problems that are not actually problematic for Jordan. So I would say in health, the data is there and it's already of great quality. With regards to funding, I think I already hinted at a solution, but let me give you another one that could be sort of intermediary. You have incredible talent. You have incredible talent in the country, okay? So you are developing people with unique skills. That should be made attractive for companies who are trying to come to the region and invest. That could be a way to bring in capital. Because what's going to be complicated is the juxtaposition of the computing and the talent. If you already have the talent, you increase the chances of bringing in the investment. What I would suggest is these partnerships with countries around you that have access to the funding, you have access to the talent, find ways that work for both. So either they invest directly here, and I know that Abu Dhabi has already done that, I believe, with a virtual hospital. If I am not incorrect, I think it was an investment of up to 800 million in order to develop that. So these types of initiatives is really what the country should be focusing on. And you are at an advantage because of all of you. You are an advantage because you have that talent, you have that gold that should be making the country more attractive. Yes?
Yeah, yesterday there was a lunch for Future Forum. It was launched by his... Yeah. Once again, you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Yesterday there was a lunch for Future Forum.
Yes.
It was launched by His Highness, the Crown Prince. So it was in collaboration with WEF, World Economic Forum. You have heard about it, haven't you?
This is why I'm here. That's what I said in the introduction.
Perfect.
Yes.
So I used to work as a business development consultant at a firm is based in Dubai. I used to work across the MENA region. I used to contact the decision makers, the C-levels. Okay, when I tell them, especially here in Jordan, I know we do lack the future trends, but in somewhere we do need, in some place we do need to capitalize our capacities, our talents. The managing partner once told me, Musa, in Jordan, you do have many talents, but you do need to find the way to incorporate these talents into world life applications. So I will figure it out. I tried to contact a couple of, I would love to work on that with you though. That's another thing. So we do have the talents here. He told me like, Little Thinking Minds. I believe like many of you here have heard about Little Thinking Minds. Little Thinking Minds was established in 2012, almost 2014. And like it was sold for CISO for $1 billion and something. The managing partner in that firm in Dubai, he told me he used to work on the public sector modernization plan in Jordan in 2010, and he told me like that woman, the founder of Little Thinking Minds, she came to find seeds funding with around $70,000 or $40,000. So from seeking a seed funding from around $70,000 to sell her Little Thinking Minds to CISO with $1.5 billion, $1 billion and something. So that is very big jump, and that we do need to find out, to realize like that we do have the talents, we do have the capacity.
You know how they call these? Unicorns. You know why they call them unicorns? Because they are exceptional. Every country, if you actually Google it or ChatGPT it, how many unicorns in Jordan, how many unicorns in Tunisia, it will tell you.
There are
these examples of people who have made a small investment in infrastructure or in AI, etc., and ended up selling it in billions. That's not necessarily what we need, though.
I believe, but I mean, like she had the foundation of how to teach teach adolescents and teenagers through or by the technological trends, the current trends at her time. She knew how to use them to deliver the best knowledge ever for students by reading Arabic books. She knew how to use them, but now
so you are making my point, which is to say that Jordan has to use its key advantage, which is talent.
Unfortunately, nowadays, like when I meet with people, even in public sector, unfortunately, when we discuss about AI, they tell me like, yeah, it is ChatGPT. Well, GPT is the language of the AI, GPT itself. I was like, AI is not only ChatGPT. AI is way wider than this. So due to that, we do need to educate ourselves first and transfer this knowledge to the next generation, and like the next generations now are being better than us in the AI. So we do need to concentrate on the capacities and the talents which we have. So I would love to, let's say, one day, I would love to discuss this with you further.
One day could be after this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Like I just want your feedback about how can we convince the decision makers, the C-levels in the public sector, to incorporate the AI to develop their capacities first in the AI, to incorporate it to the public sector.
Okay, very simple. Like I said, there was this initiative, Future Forum, under the patronage of His Royal Highness. I think they're going to do an amazing job. And if there are still people in Jordan who are not convinced of the transformational nature of AI, that's going to change. Thank you. Sorry, there are other people. Yes, sir.
Question. Thank you. First, thank you very much for this very insightful presentation. It's really very well structured. If you have to recommend, and I'm going to take it down a notch to tangible skills. If you have to recommend 3 skills for Jordanian schools and universities to focus on from a very early stage, what would you recommend?
Okay, so actually, very difficult question. I have an entire task force on education that is trying to think about that. And I would say the 2 that come to mind that, okay, let me backtrack for a second. What we want to prevent is to create an educational system that's going to rely fully on artificial intelligence, okay? So you are of that age where you remember when you had to do mental calculation, right? That was part of the curriculum in school. And some of us, the older people, you could not get a job unless you knew how to do math and mental calculation. How many of you, if you go to a restaurant and you have a bill and you need to divide it by 4, how many of you actually do it by head? Nobody, because we all have a phone, we have a calculator, okay? This is a skill, ladies and gentlemen, that is no longer useful. We are at a critical step right now where people like us are making these decisions in the education system as to what we will continue to have as human skills and what we are basically handing over to the artificial intelligence. And honestly, it is not an easy task. So I'm going to give you just 2 straight answers. Empathy, critical thinking. Empathy and critical thinking are 2 skills that will be human and you can use across the board. Whether you are becoming a doctor or a lawyer or an architect, these are the ones that are really going to separate you. I don't want to pit us against artificial intelligence. I think, when I was talking at the Delphi Economic Forum, I made this point, and I'm going to make it to you as well. If you're worried about basically being unemployed because of artificial intelligence, no, don't be worried about being unemployed because of artificial intelligence. You know who is going to make you unemployed? Is your competitor enhanced by artificial intelligence. So it's not the tool, it is the human enhanced by the tool. So think about that. We are at a point where we all have to agree and accept that we have to better ourselves using the tool, understand how to, and then become better at our jobs. Critical thinking, empathy, these are skills that are probably going to be a little bit more difficult, and luckily so, to hand over to the machine. We should keep them as human. Yes?
I'm Vasu, I'm from UNICEF, and previously I used to work with the World Bank. So a large part of my portfolio was AI and the future of work, as well as AI and healthcare. And as you rightly pointed out, data sets, when they learn from our own actual data, they create biases towards gender, towards race, and towards other minority groups. And we are right now, there are legal frameworks and grievance redressal mechanisms for it. But when you look at lower and middle income countries, especially even like Rwanda, just you said, 1994, the genocide itself was exacerbated by the fact that national IDs had ethnicities, Hutus and Tutsis. So when in an AI age, we use it across the spectrum, from social protection to health. And one example that really popped up in my mind was if you're, I'm sure you're following it, how even for persons with disability, they are AI bots, which can provide counseling as well as one-on-one interaction, and it can capture even the facial expressions and give them the redressal. But then you have to also think about personal data protection and the legal frameworks which have to emerge proactively and not as a afterthought.
Afterthought.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's really interesting. And when I started the initiative, because it was worldwide, it was so evident, the clash between the Europeans on ethics and the clash between the Americans on ethics. So the Americans were like, oh my God, don't put regulations, you're going to stifle innovation. Like, we don't want that, we just want to create all these great ideas. And the Europeans were like, no, 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 no. We have to think about patient rights, we have to think about the data, etc. And then, yes, as a result, maybe the innovators get a little bit turned off. So they came up with a strategy. I'm sure you've heard about it. It's called sandboxing, okay? So the idea of the sandboxing is just like a child, and you are the parent, and they play in the sandbox. As long as they play nicely, you don't say anything. If they start hitting each other with the tools, then you intervene. It's a little bit the same. So the idea is like, let's not put stringent regulation on the innovators and the developers of AI. Let's give them some flexibility, but let's verify. Let's make sure that they're not going outside of the. And if we feel that they actually cross certain boundaries, then we can put these limitations. So UK, Brazil are doing this. I have made that point to some of the dear Jordanian colleagues that I think that Brazil could be a country that would very much help Jordan and should very much help Jordan, because in terms of AI policy and regulation, first of all, they are low and middle income country. They are admitting that themselves, and they are ahead because they have been thinking about this basically since 2020 about the AI framework, and they are quite advanced. They're leaving the innovators, but they're also making sure that the population is protected. Yes.
Right. First of all, thank you. Maybe just a quick comment to my colleague here that mentioned it's very hard to have funding for startups. I have an AI startup, and I think it's relatively easy here. There are investors who are aware and eager to fund local startups here. I'll tell you later about them, and this is just for everyone, that the investor scene is kind of catching up, and they're
Yes, let me make a point on that. So there was a booth yesterday at the Future Forum about investing in Jordan. So there are many programs for Jordanian innovators where they will help you legally, where they will help you financially. And I was actually surprised, but it sounds like the word has not gone out that this is available. Yeah. And it's partnerships between private sector and the government to provide these grants, not loans, grants.
Yeah. So, or VC investments as well. So, my question is, so I love the presentation, thank you. It's all forward thinking, it's all kind of...
optimistic?
No, not optimistic. It's kind of slightly mid to long term in a bit, right? Investing in education.
I'm trying to provoke, Right? I am a boy from the region, yeah. And I want our region to do well, and I do think that, collaboration.
Definitely.
This morning we had an exercise by the World Economic Forum where we had 3 scenarios, and one was like total independence, no one is talking to anybody. One was everybody is living in a happy Disneyland world. And then one was more regional partnerships. But you have to think about these realities in the current geopolitical context.
And I love that model, by the way. I really hope it works. My question is, I am an AI startup owner, and I always feel I'm late, Whatever I'm building, I feel it's already too late. I have to rush more, I have to be faster. So my question is, between this mid to long-term stance, what do you think, short-term, what can we do, maybe as governments, immediate actions or top 3 immediate actions that they should do this year, next year? Because, investing in education, 5-10 years, investing in solar panels in Africa, 15-20 years, right? So while building that, the train would be way ahead of us on all of that. So what do you think?
I'm going to give you 2 answers. Yeah, number 1, if you think you are too late, and I made this point also to some colleagues this morning. No, what do you mean? This is year 3. You will be late in 10 years. You will be late in 20 years. But isn't it better to start whatever idea you have in 2025 than be paralyzed and say, oh, you know what, we're already 3 years into the race. Jordan has no chance. I don't think that that's the right philosophy. It really isn't. Maybe my cop-out response will be, the Future Forum, with the 6 areas that I told you about, is going to come out with strategic points that Jordan thinks it should focus on. Maybe that would be a good starting point for you. Which area are you in, by the way? In innovation in what field?
So mainly AI, mainly in fintech, basically.
Fintech, okay. So there was something about AI and digital finance. So look at, I'm assuming it will be released, right? Publicly. I think it would be actually to the interest of the council and to the country to make this available for the population. But anyways, look at the priorities. There were 3 for each of the theme about things that experts in each of the field thought was the most important for the country. But I will tell you, with Dr. Rami, we were working in the health field this morning. 3 were publicized, but we actually had probably 15 that we came up with, and a lot of them were very good. So try to look at that. I can't tell you, focus on this, focus on that, only because I am not Jordanian expert enough. You would actually know this better. Try to identify what is a need in health, what is a need in the financial system. And sometimes don't reinvent the world. You know, there are amazing ideas that are coming out of the African continent using artificial intelligence. Also super smart people over there. And, you know, maybe these ideas haven't percolated over to this part of the world. So.
Just a quick follow-up, sorry.
Sorry, I'm going to try to diversify. Yes, in the back. Yes, you. Wait for the microphone. Hania, how much time do we have? Okay.
Hi, my name is Jafar Wahib. I'm a high school student. First of all, just to reply to what you said to the gentleman over here, there's a quote by George Eliot. It says, it's never too late to become what you might have been. I just wanted to mention that.
Beautiful.
I wanted to ask you a question. You addressed the sort of brain drain that's going on, and how some countries are also investing into low-income countries or developing countries. So what I wanted to ask was, what also could be the motives behind these investments? Because over history, we learned that lots of these motives could be exploitative. And so how could we sort of understand that?
Motives, let me understand your question. The reason why the UK is poaching Ghanaian nurses is A, because they're brilliant, and 2, because they don't have enough nurses for their NHS. The reason why the Gulf is poaching Jordanian doctors is because they are brilliant and because they don't have enough doctors. So that's I don't think that there's some evil plot to try to destabilize Jordan or Ghana or Tunisia. The question I think that we should be asking ourselves is, how do you prevent it? Now, again, conflict of interest, I'm obviously conflicted because I did leave, but there are ways to do that. So the Minister of Digital Transformation of Rwanda, I actually had this conversation with her when I said, aren't you worried that you're putting all this investment into training these AI experts? And it's not just engineers, by the way, it's also people who understand health and AI or education and AI. And then all of a sudden the US or France or UK comes and they seal them. She's like, Yanis, it's very difficult to fight that. So our response is we just train many more than what we would need so that we try to compensate for the ones who leave. Number 1. Number 2, Tunisia has a system. I don't know whether Jordan does that. So and I did not have to do this because I was not in the Tunisian system, I was in the French system. But when you are in Tunisia, in the Tunisian system, so government, and you are in the top 100 students, you can pick any university in the world and they will pay for it. You can go to Oxford, you can go to Columbia, you can go to Stanford. The only requirement is you give 5 to 10 years back to the motherland, okay? So there are these types of initiatives that you send someone, you train, and then you find an interesting way to bring them back. So there are ways. In the end of the day, you know, Jordanians will remain Jordanians. This is the homeland. Like, you know, I always am happy to go back. The culture, something that will bring you back. And let's not forget that there is also the capital advantage, right? So the Jordanians who are abroad, they contribute to the economy. They are sending money back from the US, from UK, from the Gulf. So it's not completely a loss, at least on the capital side. So many questions. Yes, 2 more. In white, yeah.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It's very interesting. I can draw a few parallels from the country from where I'm from and from Jordan, and I've only been here since October. But specifically around the question of brain drain. Where I'm from, and I'm from Ireland, by the way, if you don't recognize my accent, Ireland has spent years and years, like maybe 20, 30 years, investing in free education for Irish residents up to their first bachelor's. What that meant, and due to the attraction of two things, cheap corporate tax and an educated workforce, attracted the big tech companies from the US to Ireland. And over the last 20 years, that has increased the lifestyle of the Irish people.
And created a housing issue.
We've gone from a middle-income country to a high-income country in about 30 years. And we still invest very much in education. And I don't work for the Irish Embassy, by the way, but we also have an initiative in Jordan, which is called the Jordanian Young Scientist. And our esteemed colleague over here is actually on the board of that initiative. And so the point I'm trying to make is that the investment is a long-term investment. And if you invest in a skilled workforce and cheaper labor, you will attract the big tech companies to come here. And then it becomes cyclical, and the brain drain problem eventually goes away. And you become an attractive place for high-tech talents to come and live in your country.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that comment. I think it's important to point out the duality, right? It's not just teaching the talent. It was also the taxation benefit. That was really interesting. And a lot of the US companies who are making billions and billions in the US but are paying zero taxes because their headquarters are based out of Dublin. We're not going to go into these types of considerations, but it could be a solution, right? Creating incentivization, and I don't know whether the room is the right one to respond to that, but create tax incentivization to make it even sweeter for the private investors to come into a country where the talent is already there. But of course, continue with training of the talent. Incidentally, my boss, who is an economist, he says, when you invest in education, the return will take 40 years. So it's something to think about, because a lot of the governments, when they spend on education, they probably are thinking about an ROI within 5 years. But that doesn't make any sense, right? Because you have to think about the life cycle of the person. And if they go to school at 5, they are fully into the workforce, yes, around 30 to 40 years later. And so that is also something that maybe certain governments are not thinking about. Okay, final question, and then I'm happy to continue talking in the next room. Yes, sorry. And I'm sorry if I will answer your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Yanis, for the very informative session. Large language models are usually built on data. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that the Arab world is very low on producing those data sets. Now, how do you see the Arab world or the GCC countries, for example, partnering with Jordan, with supercomputers and starting AI projects without tackling the basic issue of Arabs or the Middle East not producing knowledge and not producing enough data, rather than like sending them to the West using all the data collection tools that we use every day. So do you think we can handle or use or make use of AI capabilities without the fundamentals of starting to produce knowledge and produce data so that we can compete like the real world of competition, in the real world of competition?
Thank you for the question. Respectfully, I will say, please rephrase the way that you just made that sentence, because we are already producing a lot of knowledge. We are already producing a lot of research coming out of this region. It's just that, like I pointed out in that table when I was showing the discrepancy between the languages, we are also forced to publish in English, right? I mean, we have studies about Hakim. The study about Hakim that will show, how many people were hospitalized in rural areas in Jordan, the virtual hospital. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have a virtual hospital in Salt, and it's doing amazing. And there is data to show, people who needed to go to see an expert versus before versus after. Is this going to be published in Arabic? No, it's going to be published in English. So we are producing amazing research, but we are forced by the scientific dominion to publish in English. So that will not be a straight. It's not about not creating value or research. The Arabic language is exceptional. I don't have to convince you. Our poets also historically have been incredible. There is a lot of text in the Arab language. The question is it digitized enough? You know, are we? And the answer is no, because you could see we are 1.3 and 0.5% of the websites. So that is probably something to think about. So Abu Dhabi did this large language model, JACE, with 13 billion parameters. I know that Qatar is also thinking about digitizing their entire national library. So initiatives like this, which I don't know whether Jordan can embark on financially, but this would be a step. It's just to make sure that the Arabic language is also represented and digitized. So it's not about creating value, because we are creating, but we are forced to create it in another language. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again so much for taking your Wednesday evening, and I will see you in the reception.